Hey, it's Mo Egger. If you and your buddies are looking for a place to watch the playoffs, how about Long Neck Sports Grill? 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. There are 4K TVs all over the place, and at Long Necks, the sound is on for every big game. No place has a better beer selection, and I'm telling you, if you haven't tried Long Neck's wings, you're missing out. What are you waiting for? Swing by Long Neck Sports Grill to watch the playoffs. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often. All right, every Wednesday we talk injuries with one of the experts from OrthoCincy Orthopedics and Sports Medicine. The great thing about OrthoCincy Orthopedics and Sports Medicine is they've got specialists and locations all across the tri-state, and they offer walk-in orthopedic urgent care at 5 tri-state locations, and they have extended evening and weekend hours in Edgewood and Anderson. You can learn more at orthocincy.com. That's orthocincy.com. With us this week is Dr. Angel Velazquez from OrthoCincy. Unfortunately, we are again, Dr. Velazquez, talking about Matt McLain and his oblique injury. And tell me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like whenever there's an oblique injury, like the timetable ends up being longer than we originally thought. Is that an unfair way of looking at it?
Well, obviously, when we're talking about, an oblique injury in a baseball player, we're talking about an important muscle that help in the rotation, and the rotation of the torso, of the, abdomen to be able to perform. Throwing the ball, even hitting the ball. So, every time you got an injury of a baseball player, that could be, could take a little bit of time, but it's depending, obviously, the degree of the extension of the injury. Obviously, we have a guy that was injured last year, and, after, they finish the season, there's always a program that this, baseball team, do to trying to prevent these type of injuries. Obviously they look at the strengthening, they look at the deficiency, they do flexibility, and they send them home, with a program, and they follow with them all the time. So obviously I expect that all those things are done, and it's just unfortunate that happened again.
So, what's the prognosis here? Are we genuinely optimistic that this is not going to be the sort of thing that could leak into the season, or should this be something that we are at least a little wary of as the season inches closer?
If the MRIs and the ultrasound and everything that can be done to evaluate this shows that there's no structural damage or there's not a significant muscle injury, this is something that can recover. Remember, when these guys feel something, and they had an injury from before, anything that they feel, and they may get concerned at the beginning. They may not tell us that they're concerned, but that's what they'll get evaluated. That's why he's shut down. He may have some soreness and some feeling that is not necessary for a significant injury, and they're just being cautious because of the history of a previous injuries. I'm not that concerned at this time because knowing, these guys, they feel, right? And it's the beginning of the spring training. They come from training all winter, and they're now trying to rampage, trying to increase the loading and increase the swinging pretty fast to get ready for games at the beginning of February. So they're going to start feeling fatigued. They're going to feel tired, even at the beginning, because their body needs to get used to the demand to play, baseball for day on and off. So this may be just soreness from working out than anything else.
Let me ask you about Noelvi Marte, very promising young prospect. End of the season at the big league level with a 16-game hitting streak, was playing winter ball back in November. Late November, suffered a grade 2 hamstring strain, and so he is going to miss some time here at the outset of the Cactus League season. Let's talk about the various strains. How severe is a grade 2 hamstring strain? Well,
that'll be moderate injury. So when you look at it, you look and see, number one, where's the injury? If it's a muscle injury or it's a tendon injury. If it's a muscle injury, grade 2, that means that you have some muscle fibers that tears, but it's not torn completely. So, definitely, it's something that will take a little bit more time than a grade 1 or just a simple soreness on it. And, you look and see if there's a muscle injury, muscle heal well with, because the muscle have a lot of blood supply. So I assume that this injury should heal with about, 6 to 8 weeks plus the return to full activity. So, depending when the injury happened in the winter time, that we're talking about late November, he had enough time to start progressing. The question is, how was the progression, where it was performed, he did all the stuff that needs to be done.
Walk me through what the program for his return might look like in the coming weeks.
Well, first, for my practice, right, I got somebody who had an injury, a grade 2 hamstring strain. It's in November. He's on the off season. Obviously, he's shut down from the winter league. And, I'm going to be aggressive. I'm going to do everything that I have on my toolbox to help him to heal appropriately. So in February, he's ready to roll. And we talk about, the rehab program, nutrition, looking for flexibility, or even, the augmentation for the healing with, platelet injection or things like that, or PRP injection, if he's a viable player. Remember, these guys are back home in the Dominican. So, you can do those things to promote healing process. Typically, muscle injury don't require, but if I'm being aggressive, that's the way that I go for it. And, you give it 6 to 8 weeks of at least the first 2-3 weeks after the injury from resting, just range of motion, then a progressive strengthening program up to the 8 weeks, and then start, light jogging and progress from that. And I assume, that 10 to 12 weeks, he's able to be more aggressive with the weightlifting and the sprinting.
Dr. Angel Velazquez from OrthoCincy is with us. I want to ask about an injury related to a college basketball player, Jerome Hunter, Xavier Musketeer. And, he's had such a difficult last year or so, had off-season heart surgery, so he's not playing this season, but he has been going through workouts. And in the course of doing so, he suffered an Achilles injury. It's even more heartbreaking for him because of what he went through this offseason, but it happened kind of late in the season, right? So he wants to play next season. I guess my question is, an Achilles injury suffered in February. Is it reasonable to expect that he could maybe be back on the court for the beginning of next college basketball season?
Well, now there's different procedures that can be done. You see Aaron Rodgers, right? How he's throwing footballs, weeks later. Obviously, it's a different sport, and it's, a different age, and things can be different depending what type of injury this young guy had and the type of surgery was performed. So I think that when you get an Achilles injury, obviously you have to repair, and it's going to take at least, 6 months for you to be able to go back to activities. Obviously, the level that he is, the sport that he plays, can take a little bit longer, right? Because you want to give it the best chance. So we're talking about, around 8 months, kind of an average, a little bit more, a little bit less, depend the person. But that's what we look at. We look about, 6 to 8 months to return to play. But everything's depending how he's doing, how he's recovery, or there's any other condition that precipitate or make him be on a risk for this type of injury.
How come, and I was thinking about this watching the Super Bowl, San Francisco 49ers Dre Greenlaw is simply running out onto the field and his Achilles pops. And it feels like this injury sometimes happens when there's not a ton of stress being put on the body. Why is that?
It's a big question because there's a lot of risk factor for this. Remember, this is the best game of the year. This is the most important game of the year. This is probably the most important game of this player's career, right? So there's a lot of things that they may be feeling through this process in the last 2, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, that they may be treated, right? And they have scans that were fine, but means MRI that doesn't show any structural damage, so they are playing through it. And if you have a little bit of tendinitis or some type of tendinosis, you say, you know what, I can play. He doesn't lose speed, he's doing well, but he still has pain, and he played through it. Well, that's what can happen, right? So sometimes these players go to this fatigue and to this inflammation and process that, the resting part will make it better. But because they are playing to the last game of the season, the last game of the year, they may be more fatigued and more tired, and injuries like this happen. And we can see any time of the year, right? We're seeing a lot of more Achilles tendon rupture in any sport in the last several years. And, we talk about in football for, the turf. If we talk about, strengthening, we're putting too much stress into these guys through the season, not too much recovery. There's a lot of factors that can go. But I think in this case, he may be playing through some, soreness through the end of the season, and he just want to play, right? You respect that, and
Sure.
You want him to play, and things like this happen.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, you're right. Dr. Angel Velazquez from OrthoCincy, awesome stuff. As always, man, thanks so much.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your time and having me anytime.
All right, there you go, Dr. Angel Velazquez, OrthoCincy. I say it every week. The awesome thing about OrthoCincy is they have specialists and locations all over the tri-state, including walk-in orthopedic urgent care during the week, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., and on Saturdays, 9 a to 1 p. at both Edgewood and Anderson. You don't need an appointment, so it's easier, and it's definitely cheaper than going to an ER whenever you have an urgent orthopedic injury. Go to OrthoCincy.com. That's OrthoCincy.com. Hey, it's Mo Egger. If you and your buddies are looking for a place to watch the playoffs, how about Long Neck Sports Grill? 3 locations in Northern Kentucky, Wilder, Hebron, and Richwood. There are 4K TVs all over the place, and at Long Necks, the sound is on for every big game. No place has a better beer selection, and I'm telling you, if you haven't tried Long Neck's wings, you're missing out. What are you waiting for? Swing by Long Neck Sports Grill to watch the playoffs. Long Neck Sports Grill. Stay late. Come often.